Good evening, everyone, and welcome to BT's Fly Tying Friday. Tonight, the 20th of March, we have our dear friend Patty Lueken, and she's tying a mouse. It's one of my favorite flies to see tied. It's just, I don't know what it is, but I really like that one. And the weekly tip, we're going to be cracking an old whip. We're the BTs now from Boise, Idaho. Tonight, we're going to be bringing our dear friend Patty Lueken into the mix. And Patty, you don't have the camera turned on you, so I can't bring you up on the spotlight, or I would. But tell you just a little bit about Patty. Fishing since the age of 2, Patty Lucan started fly fishing and tying over 20 years ago. This led to FFI membership and ultimately to chair of Women's Connect programs and serving on the FFI board of directors and executive committee. Patty also serves on the fly tying board and other FFI committees. Patty loves being retired. On a local level, Patty is president of her FFI affiliate club. Her favorite fish to catch is smallmouth bass, but stands ready to catch any fish that's willing to bite. Patty has earned multiple FFI awards, including Fly Fisher of the Year. The studio is all yours right now, Patty.
Okay, thank you. We're going to tie a mouse pattern. This is actually a pattern that is in our book, the Fly Tying Group book that we did last year. We still have some for sale if you want one. But the pattern it's a pretty simple little pattern. It's simple enough that someone that hasn't tied very much can tie, but it's also a very, very effective fly. So this is what we're tying. And we'll get started now. What I want to start with first is the recipe or the ingredients, because you can change some things around. So a recipe is, that says it's one certain way. But when you call it ingredients, you can maybe do something a little bit different. So anyway, the mouse pattern starts with, I use a 3366 BR. It's size 2. It's a mustat. There you go. There's the pack on it. And I get these 1,000 at a time because they're a lot less expensive. Okay. And this is what the fly actually looks like. It's a nice wide gap fly. And I use these for smallmouth bass flies and for trout. And what I've found is a lot of my smallmouth bass flies that I make work just great for trout. So I don't know if y'all have had that experience or not. And I use this particular pattern for both. And I've caught that particular trip I was telling you about whenever I had that grizzly bear encounter. On that trip, I caught, they were sea run brook trouts. They're between 3 and 5 pounds, and it was up on the Sutton River up in Ontario, right close to where it comes down for the Arctic Circle. And I mean, they ate this mouse up. And I had taken about 15 of them or something, and I was the only female, of course, on the trip. Matter of fact, at that time, they'd had maybe 50 people go on this trip over about 7 or 8 years. And I was the only female that had ever been on that trip. So I don't know if that's the case still, but anyway, fun trip. But the trout just absolutely loved it. And the guys were all trying to do favors. They would get my breakfast or do whatever just so they could get a fly. And I think every one of them had a birthday that week, so they got one for their birthday. Anyway, so this is a very, very effective fly. I use it here in Arkansas. on the White River, and I use it for smallmouth bass a lot. And it's very effective for that in Minnesota and in southern Canada. So if you're want to have a reason to tie it, that's it. And I'll show you a couple of variations on it as we get going. But the thing I want to do now is put the fly or put the hook into the vise. And I'm doing that off camera right now. And be sure that you have put the barb down. I always do that first because once you've mashed that barb, you know that you're not going to mess up your hook before you get it dressed. Because once it's dressed, and if you have to go back and mash down the barb and you mess it up, then all that work was for nothing. Okay, so we've talked about the hook. The next thing I want to talk about is something you get at the local hardware or Hobby Lobby, or you can get it at Walmart. And I buy it in sheets like this because I make a lot of these patterns. And you can get them in different colors. I use a beige. And the reason I use this light beige is because it's the easiest color I have found to contrasting with the water. So any time of day, I'm pretty much able to use this particular color and see my fly in the water. And you can fish these things right up till dark, because early in the morning and late at night or in the evening, those mice tend to come out. But I found you could catch them, and I catch them all day actually. So I don't really worry too much about being morning or night. I don't know what they think they are in the middle of the day, but whatever it is, they think it's tasty. So I cut mine. My sister has a tool that will cut foam or whatever, and I do this in 1/2 inch wide strips, and just I think hers does 8.5 by 11. So I can just take a strip of paper, and it'll make me a whole bunch of these. And when you're first starting, and frankly, I think a lot of you on here are way more experienced than I am, but you have a little trouble with your materials. I'll just leave it long like this and tie it on when I'm tying these up myself, because, not that foam's expensive, but you're saving on materials. But if you are just beginning to tie, I would recommend that you start out with smaller strips. And you could actually make this one a little bit shorter, but you don't want to shortchange yourself on the length of your material, because it's like if you have if you're tying a knot and you just have a little bitty string, well, then you're going to have trouble tying. And so it's much easier if you have a little more material. The next thing you're going to need is your thread. And you don't have to have 8/0 thread. I use a uni thread just because a long time ago I decided I did not want to own all the thread that is on the market. So I said, I'm going to find one material that I can use. Now, if I'm tying deer hair, I do use a heavier thread, but I use 8/0 uni thread, and it creates a little bit of a unique situation when you're tying foam. And I'll show you how I handle that so that you don't break, or I probably jinx myself now, so that you don't break your thread while you're tying it. Okay, and the next thing you need is pine squirrel skin, and this is zonked. And the only people, well, there's a lot of glare on that. Can y'all see it? Anyway, it's pine squirrel.
Fairly well, Patty. We get the idea. Yeah.
Okay, pine squirrel zonked. And the only people I know that actually make this now is Wapsie. And I've actually been to the Wapsie plant while they were zonking this, and they just have a hand cutter and just cut it 14 or 15 slices to one of these skins. So you'll just see the little skin there, and then they just take it off. It's kind of cool to watch. I don't know because they do use this little hand machine, but all the pieces of the zonked skin are not the same size. And I suppose that has to do with the tension on how they're doing it. But this is what it looks like. Now you can buy these with little strips that are 3 or 4 pieces, but I would recommend getting the whole zonked skin because it's less expensive by far. Now, some people have asked me about using rabbit instead of using this squirrel. I don't recommend it. Couple of reasons. Even though rabbit does kind of float too, you can see how much thicker it is. It's going to contain a whole lot more water. And when you go to cast it after 5 or 6 casts, it gets much harder to cast than this pine squirrel that's zonked. So this is kind of what I find is the happy medium. This also sits a little bit higher in the water even after it's been used a number of times. So I use natural. I have also made it with brown, and frankly, I've made it with the crawfish. Now we know crawfish aren't on top of the water, but that crawfish colors it's a beautiful orange. And I've caught smallmouth using that. I don't know if they think that the crawfish just came to the top, and I don't know, it works. So I've also used it in purple, and that's really good late in the evening. So anyway, I've already pulled off, when I was talking about the skins, I've pulled off one piece, and we will, I'll just cut that off the skin, and we will be using that here in just a minute. The other thing that you need is silly legs. And I buy these by the quarter pound or the half pound, depending on, I've got 2 colors that I buy, orange and green, this pumpkin seed green. I buy those in big quantities and the rest less. And you know, I believe in supporting your fly shop, but I also believed that I got to support myself. So it's a whole bunch cheaper when you're using a lot of it. And we'll use one of the strips. And these strips come in, there's 20 in that strip, and they'll be real long, and you'll just cut them. This is a strip, and then the next strip. And then what you can do is you just pull off one at a time, or if you need 2, you can pull off 2 at a time. And it makes it really easy to work with these pieces. And if you think, man, I'll never need that many, go in with a friend. I've got 2 friends. We've all got a packed closet full of materials now because, you know, I'd want something and they'd want something. And so we just switched out. Okay, we are ready to tie the mouse, and I'm going to switch back over to the camera. All right, I've got the hook in there, and I have pushed down the barb. Doesn't look like I pushed it down as hard as I could have, but I did. Okay, we're going to put on the thread. Now, there are going to be 2 points on this fly that you're going to need to keep in mind when you are tying the fly, so that all of the flies you tie look alike, or that's the theory. So one of them is going to be, I'm going to tie in the thread like 2 hook eyes behind the eye, okay? And then I'm going to take the thread and take it back to the tip of the point that I just mashed down. I'm going to go fairly slow doing that because I want to put a thread base here. The other point that we're going to focus on is the tip that I was telling you. And you can see how I'm going to stop right there because that is at the hook point. And if I do that on every one of my flies, Jim Ferguson would think that was a good fly when he was evaluating it. Okay, and I'm going to, I don't cut off, I just slide off. I work with scouts a lot and, or did, and you never tell them to cut something. What you tell them to do is just kind of slide it through, and that way they don't cut off all their thread. Okay, the next thing we're going to put on here, or the first material we're going to put on, is a tail. Now, I've pre-cut the tail because I know you're supposed to do that whenever you're tying something for a video. And I just took it off of a piece of one of these. And I'm going to tie it in what seems weird, but I'm going to tie it in with the skin side up. And I like to put on the tail, this is just for humans, has nothing to do with the fish. But I make me a little V thing just so it kind of looks cool on my fly. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to tie this in where just about 1/4 of an inch there. And it will come out right there at the same spot where I have the tip of my barb. And then I'm going to bring this forward. Tie it in really good because I use about 1.25 inches on my tail, and then tie it in. So if you're having trouble with the fish short striking, you can cut a little bit of that tail off. I do that quite a bit with when I have working with woolly boogers or something like that, because you never know, how the fish are going to be hitting that day. Some days they're mouthy, and other days I just want to just grab it. And smallmouth will typically hit it in the side, but your trout tend to suck things in. So you want to make sure that they get the hook sucked in also. All right, now I'm bringing the thread back up to the front, and I'm focusing in on stopping it exactly where I tied in when I began the fly. And so you can see I've still got plenty of room up here to put more materials in. Now the next thing I'm going to put in, not sure what I did with it. Well, I may have to, I'll cut another piece. I just lost my strip. But it's no big deal. Matter of fact, I found it. I'm going to show you something on when you're dealing with pine squirrel. And I know there was a thing on there as micro or regular. This is the regular pine squirrel. And they didn't have micro for a long time, but I guess they found them some tiny little squirrels. Anyway, when you are tying, you're going to want to make sure that you are, or you're going to cut this off. You want to make sure that you get your scissors in and that you are not cutting the hair, okay, the fur. You want to just cut the skin. So anytime you're working with something like this, that's what you want to use. And you'll see, just like I was saying earlier, this right here it's not even straight the whole time. It's thicker in some parts rather than others. And I'm assuming that's because it's hand done. But anyway, it won't matter on this fly. And what we're going to do now, and we're going to tie this in with the skin side down. And we're going to bring our thread, and I love having a nice thick thread base. And the reason that's important is I have caught as many as 37 fish on one of these before it just totally demolished itself. And if you want to have a very durable fly, you need to have one that certainly that the foam stays in its spot and that things don't move around the hook. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and tie this in. I don't like that very end piece. All right. And I'm going to tie it in where it's going to, where it'll actually end up that it's tied right where, oh, that's not what I want to do next. I want to put the foam on. I'm sorry. I practiced one of these just before I got on. So I can tell you how well that worked. Okay. I need to put my foam on. How I'm going to do that is I'm going to cup the foam on each side of my hook. And I'm going to put it in at that same spot, which is 2 eye lengths behind the eye. And I told you that I was going to show you how to tie using an 8/0 thread. I take it and I have it cupped on each side, and I'll drop back. You can see I've come back about 1/4 of an inch, and I'll drop back about 1/4 of an inch and tighten it, and then I go forward. You can see I'm moving back forward, and when I do that, it takes a lot of the issues out of needing to almost break your thread to get enough tension. So I'll keep doing that all the way back. Now, when I get back to the back, this is always a critical step if you're wanting to make these exactly the same. And I want to be sure that I'm still using this same focal point here that I've used all along. And it's going to be used kind of in a unique way, because I want to see what this fly is going to look like once I have, and I stopped this short. I mean, I know I did because I want you to be able to see. You can see I don't want to have this gap there. I have a gap between the foam and the tail. I want it to just cover that tail. So I need to put some more, need to make it just a little bit more. I'm going to look at it and I'm going to make sure that I've got it right. And I'll know when I've got it right. You can see that it's smooth on the back. If you don't, you want it to be in the center. The center is right over the middle of the hook. And you want there to not be any sort of crease or anything on either side. And that's how you know you've gotten your spot correct. So you can check all of that before you actually start tying stuff down. Okay. Now, it's not critically important on this particular fly, but it's always good when you're tying if you use good techniques, because at some point, some flies, it is going to make a difference. So with this, I want it to look pretty darn straight, where it's all the same diameter. And that way, when I'm tying a fly where it really matters on, it will look good. But anyway, we'll do that here. And now we're going to do the step that I tried to do a while ago. And that is we're going to tie in our strip. And we're tying it in with the, and it won't matter how you tie it in. You just kind of doesn't matter if the hair, how the hair is going, I guess is what I should say. except you want the hair up. Now the warp or the warp, this is like on fabric. You have one certain way that the fly is or that the fur is going, and when you have that, I want it where it's going backward, and then we're going to train it as we go up this hook. The first wrap that I'm going to do, well, first off, I'm going to take my thread, and where am I going to take it back to? I'm going to take it back to my starting point, which is where I've focused everything is on that particular spot, and also back here at the back. So now I want to take my skin side down, and I want to run it completely around in the very same spot before I go forward. And that way you won't see a back. If you're looking at the back end of that fly, you won't see one side having more hair than the other side. Now I'm going to, in consecutive touching on these strips, I'm going to go forward, and I'm going to train. Let me see if I can, or you can see it. I'm going to train. I'm doing that with the wrong hand right now, but I'm showing you I want to train it where it goes back, because I do not want to catch my fur underneath the tied in strip. See how that's going? And since I started with my fur going backwards, it's training itself really easily. Now, I know I have a rotary vise here, and I probably should be using that. There may be some of y'all saying that, but when I'm doing this, I don't like to use a rotary vise because I really can't train my hair back. Okay, now I'm going to end this with one wrap in front of where I have been wrapping it before. Okay. So I'm going to be one wrap in front. Somehow I didn't do that very well. Anyway, so what I've got here, I'll cut off the skin. And now I'm just going to pull it back and set it. Can y'all see that? Okay, run a few wraps around it. And I do not like using glue very often. And if I'm going to use this, though, for taking it, like, say, to Canada, and I don't have a way to retie my stuff, I will, and I'll put glue on it. And here's one spot that you might want to glue it, but I wait till I've finished the next step before I would do that. I told you we use the silly legs, and I'm going to fold these silly legs in half. And then I'm going to fold them in half again as I put it around my thread. I want to try to get both ends the same. And this is just a little quick way of doing putting on the legs. And they're really, I mean, they're legs, but you could put them on at the back or wherever, and one is at the front, but I've found that this works just as well. Okay, and I put those on pretty hard, and then I'm going to adjust them. Looks like that one needs some severe adjustment. Okay, and Now what I'm gonna do is I've got my, is that still in focus?
Yes, it is, Patty. Very good
Okay.
focus.
It didn't look like it, and I thought I'd hit it, so. Okay. Now I'm gonna part the hair up on top, just like that. And I'm gonna flip my foam over the top. Push all my hair back. And what I usually do there, but I didn't want to gross y'all out tonight because I've got a cold and everything, but I usually, what I will do is put some spit on it, which is the cheapest fly tying material I have. Anyway, so I'm going to do a preset on where I want my thread to be as I tie down my foam. And then once I'm satisfied with where I am, I tighten it and run about 3 or 4 wraps around it. Now, I don't like to go down on, I want to just have loose wraps until I'm ready to actually put it down, because you can leave a permanent mark on that foam and it'll always be there for as long as you're tying. And it looks unsightly. There's nothing wrong with it, but if you're fishing with it, but it is nicer to have it with it without some extra segments on top. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut off the foam. Now, you can see here's the hook eye, and I am right behind that hook eye now. So I had plenty of room there to put my materials on and tie everything off. Now I'm going to show you how to do this where it's always going to be the same. I take, and you need the same set of pliers if you're going to use them. And I like these little pliers. And so I will push the scissors up next to my hook end of my hook eye. And then what I'm going to do with them like that, I'm going to fold over and I'm going to actually make a cut. And that cut will be squared off and will be the same on this fly as it was on any other fly that I tied. So it makes it very consistent, which is kind of what we look for when we're trying to do something special. Okay, and I think you're going to be able to see better than I am, but I don't think I am going to use a little spit there because I'm about to tie this off. And I want to make sure that I don't have any fur up here around my hook eye. Now, fishing it, it's fine, but if you don't have any, it looks better if you don't have a lot of hair caught in there. Okay, so I'm going to do, now I'm making this a fishing fly, so I did about 5, and I'd probably, if I'm taking it to Canada or somewhere, I'd probably run it around there again. But I'm going to go ahead and tie this off, and you can see that, yeah. Anyway, I can mess with my fur a little bit, but the next thing I need to do is bring this down, and I want to cut off the ends. Now I try to do this, I kind of eyeball it, and because I kind of know what I've been doing, and I just cut it off like that so that both sides will be the same, and they will typically run pretty close to each other. And of course, they make a really nice V in the water whenever you are fishing this. And so here is your fly. I was going to show it to you with one of these little clips that Al showed me how to use.
Oh,
Okay, there's the fly.
Do you glue the head?
Okay, that's the next thing we're going to talk about. I don't usually, when I'm just fishing around here with it, I don't use any glue on this at all. But if I'm going to be going somewhere else, I glue the first place I glue is underneath, right there. Because the critical part's going to be the that thread, okay? And then up on top, I may go ahead and just put a tiny little bead up on top. I don't want a lot on top because I don't want it'll soak into that foam real easily. And you don't want a lot of, something hard there because the fish may feel that and say that's not natural feeling. So anyway, that's something I do when I need to. So you've got your, on the sides, you can see how it's out on each side, and it'll, when I cast it, I will cast it out, and those little legs will kind of wiggle in the water, and all those little hairs, you can see underneath how many little hairs you have. Well, all those little furry hairs will wiggle in the water. And I cast it and let it sit there, especially when you're talking about bass. They may come from quite a distance to get to your fly. And so if they hear that vibration, well, I guess they don't hear it with their lateral lines, but when they feel that vibration, they're going to go to where that vibration is if they're hungry. So give them a minute to get there. So don't take it away from them too soon. Anyway, then I bring it in. I'll just do a couple little jerks and bring it in. Just, how you kind of just do jerks. And I will let it sit again. And I let it sit both times until all the ripples around it are gone. And I'll continue to do that if I feel like that's productive. Or sometimes they like to see it swimming more, or they like to see a real jerky a swim motion. So you can do any of those things, and you'll just kind of have to see what the fish are going to like. That's one nice thing about doing a topwater fly, is it's so wonderful to just be able to just look at it and then see how the fish react to it. And you'll be able to know if it short strikes, or if it hits it from the side, doesn't like it. Well, maybe that's not what they're wanting today. But that's basically the fly. I will show you a couple of other reiterations of this fly. The first one is, if you want a little more noise, you can make the fly like this. And you flip it back where it's got a big front on it, like a big nose. And I want you to look, because underneath it is where your hook is, so you're not affecting it. And you can do that, or you can even cut the front of it, and that will give you a little more water resistance, even more than the other one. So you can try that. If you are having trouble even with this light colored, or you have a darker colored foam, because that's just what you have, you can put green or yellow or orange, a piece of foam, just a tiny piece of foam on there, and just tie it in right here. And that's just a little indicator for you to be able to see the fly. Of course, that does help in late evening. And I'll show you another way I make this fly. And I did this, I was in Canada fishing, and there was a bunch of lily pads, and I was having trouble. I didn't want to go subsurface, and my mouse was not working as well as I thought it should. So I had certain materials, so I made me a frog mouse. So this is like a little frog. You throw it, hit on the lily pad, and then you pull it off. And of course, this is the back is actually like the chickaboo or whatever on your marabou strips. And I like to use, and this is different than what I had the first time that I made it. I just had that sloping packs, but this is a really nice one. This is a whiting pack. And I've started making them out of these because they have the coloration is just beautiful. And I also make these sometimes with green, and I use orange, and I'll use orange quite often on my legs. And I should have done that tonight with this because what you're seeing is green on green background. I did not think ahead. But here is the material, and Living Waters is a fly shop down in Texas. I know there's a bunch of Texas folks on tonight. So, but it's a whiting material, and it is wonderful. It comes in all kinds of different colors, and I use this material for a lot of stuff. So that's what it looks like if you want to make something different. Okay. No, pine squirrel is not available in crosscut.
One of the questions was, Patty, do you use a weed guard on the frog style?
I've done it both ways. And I don't know, maybe it's just my thought, but and maybe I use too thick of a weed guard, but I would do the weed guard where you come from back here and then you tie it in so it's underneath. And you're not seeing that. So it's underneath. That's the weed guard I use. And I'm sure it has a name, and some of you experts probably know. But I have used that weed guard, but I find that it distracts from catching. And I can make these up real fast. So if I lose one on a lily pad, or they're right on top of the water, you can usually go get them. So I have not made with weed guards here in quite a while.
Okay, Patty, that was great. Is there any other questions for Patty?
And thank you, Al, and everyone for listening. And I appreciate you allowing me to be on.
Yeah, one quick
Pat?
question, Patty. Do you fish it exactly the same for trout and for bass, or do you have different techniques?
I use basically the same technique, and which is actually multiple techniques. I'll always take it out there and let it sit until all the ripples are gone, at least twice. But then I will, with trout, you may want to give it more action instead of just letting it sit there in the ripples. But I try it both ways because trout a lot of times will follow it, pretty much to the boat. And so you want to keep it in the water and keep it moving. But with when I'm working and fishing the shorelines or the stumps or whatever, when I'm fishing for smallmouth, I will do, my first ripple, then I'll do the jerk, and then I'll do another ripple, and then I'll do probably a third one. If I'm not getting anything, I recast, but not necessarily so as quickly with trout. So I think that's probably the only difference, but you need to try all of those techniques to see which one works better.
Thank you, Patty. Any other questions for Patty before we move on? Patty, that was thoroughly awesome. I absolutely love that fly. I even have dreams about it sometimes. So, Patty,
I'll send you some.
Oh, you don't need it. You don't. I've got all the stuff to tie them. But if you insist, okay.
So I have a question. Sorry I couldn't get off of mute. The question is, was the entire fly tied with pine squirrel strip?
Yes.
Okay.
And if you plan it right, you can get about 17 strips out of this. And they don't do a very good job at the top because, they are hand tying this. You'll see right here. So if you want to take the extra effort, you'll see it only goes to here, but it could go clear on up to here.
You're not showing us, Al.
We can't see it, Patty.
Yeah, just a sec.
Yes.
Okay. Because I'm not synced up with something. I've hit something. Okay. If you will look on this pine squirrel.
Move it slightly towards the hand you're there. Oh, good. Perfect. Right there.
Okay. I can't see it, so I'm doing this blindly. I feel like a weatherman. Anyway, you can take your pine squirrel, if you will just go to the back of it here, and you can cut it farther up. Just be sure
Right.
you aren't cutting the skin. I mean, you're cutting the skin, but not the, so you want definitely pointy scissors. Now, if you get it right up here in the very top where the face starts, it will, the fur just goes crazy. I wouldn't use that, but a lot of this other fur is great. And so you can get out of a long strip like this, that will do you can do two mice out of that. And so I cut the tail off on this bottom end because I want my tail to hang over, because you see what I'm saying? So take it off the bottom, then cut this strip off from the top, and then you start from the top to actually tie it in to make the body of your fly.
Is that, Patty, is that the micro?
No, it's the regular.
It's regular, okay.
I have used the micro. I don't use it on this particular fly because mice aren't that tiny. I mean, even when they're little, once they start moving around, get their eyes open and all that, they're big enough that you want to use regular.
Okay, thank you.
Hey,
But here it
Patty.
is, the pine squirrel skin, zonked natural.
Hey, Patty,
Yes.
it's Fred.
Hey, Fred.
When you finish that skin and all you got left is the head part, take a pair of electric clippers and shave it. It makes wonderful dubbing.
Yes, it does. Matter of fact, I'll cut, like a lot of times I'll do one of these whole things, and you're going to get some of your fur in there. You don't mean to, but it is going to get cut with your scissors. And
Right.
I save those piles, and it is awesome. Thank you for mentioning that, Fred, because that's a really good point for folks.
Hey, Patty, this is Bill Clumper. You may want to check with Chris and look at the Coq de Leon cape. Because I've got that green cape instead
Yes.
of schlapping, I've got the same thing, but I've now got a full cape with nice long feathers and everything else, and it may be cheaper because at the time I got it was $39 for a full cape versus $25 for the schlappen pack.
Yeah, I paid 20 for this.
Okay.
But, oh, yeah, you're probably right. Thank you for that great tip.
Anything
And
else
I'm
for
going to see
Patty
Chris
before we?
next week, and he promises he's coming to Salbug, which
Yeah.
starts next Wednesday evening for the tires and runs Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And I know several of you are coming up there. Fred's coming. I know Barry, Larry Olson. I don't know who all else. Al Ritt.
Do you ever use floatant on the fur?
No, you don't need to.
Do you ever use a stinger hook?
No. I've used this hook. Stinger hook would definitely work.
No, I mean a
And
second
actually
hook.
might be a better hookup.
Okay, well, Patty, again, thank you for an absolutely fabulous presentation.
You're welcome.
And now we're ready to move into the next part of the program, which is cracking an old whip. And before,
There's an old guy cracking the whip.
oh, I got that wrong. It's an old guy cracking the whip. And if you believe that I cracked the whip with her, or do you have a different story? Anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about. I got my first tie-in kit back in the late 50s. It was a herder's kit. And though that's all gone, the only thing I've got left is what I found in looking through a bunch of stuff, several years ago. It was a whip finish tool. It was a herder's whip finish tool. And I'll just set that down for the moment. And with it is the one I really wanted to talk about, is the Thompson Whip Finish Tool. And I got to tell you, it seems that an awful lot of people have one of these and have trouble using it. And we're going to move those in front of the vise so you can see it better. But back over at the vise, what we need to do is talk about two basic styles of whip finisher. And this is one that almost everybody is familiar with. It seems like over the years, the Matarelli design style, general way of wrapping a whip finish is what the industry settled on. I'll set that down for a moment and let me grab that Thompson. Now, that Thompson is shaped very much different. It's got a flexible arm here. It can flex over here. But what I wanted to really show you is on the Matarelli, we have a hook at the front. That's for hooking the thread. Well, we also have a hook in the front of this one. But I want you to notice that it's shaped like an S. And very few people really know the proper way of using this. I had the one, that Herder's one, I had it for years, never could figure out how to run it. In fact, let me jump over there for a minute, real quick. Okay. This thing came to me with tying instructions and line drawings. That's the way everything was back in those days. We didn't have photographs or videos or anything like that. It was line drawings. I never could figure out how to do a whip finish with this. So it laid for a long, long time until I ran into Jack Dennis, and I forget what show it was at. But anyway, it was just after he had written one of his books, which would be sometime in the late 70s, if I remember right. Anyhow, he was at the show and he showed me how to use this. It is very important that you remember we have an S here. Now, very quickly, I think everybody knows how this works. I'll do one real quick just so you see it. Let's see if we can lay it on the thread, bring it up, and I want you to notice that the tool, the hook of the tool, the back end of the tool, and the thread, they all form a triangle. And the front end of that triangle coming off the hook gradually gets shorter as you wrap around the hook until it gets to the point where you can't wrap anymore. But that's all right. By then, you should be tightening the knot. Now set that aside. What we have here, though, is the S. And I'm going to show you now how to put on a whip finish with this. You take the tool, you think that that's up right side up. Actually, it's whichever way you want, but this is right side up with the larger end sticking up in the air. Now, what I want you to notice that I am going to, maybe you can pop in on the tight shot, Gretchen, up there on number 1. And okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this, and I want you to see what I'm doing here. I'm taking the S and laying it right on the near side of the hook. I'm coming over the hook, the lower hook of the S, coming straight across to the flexible arm and stopping. Now I will rotate to the other side of the hook and bring the bobbin across. Come on. I gotta get that pulled out a bit. Sorry, folks. I'll just start over. From the side, around front of the arm, bring it up even with the hook. And now you just start twisting around the hook. You still have a triangle there, but the one side of the triangle is a lot shorter than what you're used to. And now we pull the hook out of the loop, and I'm trying to show that I dropped it, but anyway, it stays on that. It works back and forth on that. I'll do this one more time now, but I'll pick up the pace a little bit. You lay it in.
Let's do that one more time.
What?
One more time, please.
Oh, sure. Okay. I'll lay it in there, loop around up to the hook. And tighten it up. Did you get it?
Mhm.
Okay. Any questions? Because
See
that's
why
the tip for
Matarelli-
tonight. I'm sorry.
I say I see why Matarelli wins.
Uh, it's what you get used to, but I got to tell you, this Thompson is a finicky son of a gun. And when I finally slammed onto a Matarelli in, I don't know, the mid '80s sometime or another, this got retired really quick. Because you're right. You're right, Chuck. So
Still
when you
think,
know how to run that Thompson, it does not form a triangle the same way you form a triangle with the hook of the Matarelli.
I still
Totally
think it's easier by hand.
I do too.
I absolutely agree with you. And in
And
fact,
cheaper.
someday I should probably show you the knot that I use, because back in the day when I got my first tie-in kit, uh, I was on a dairy farm in Iowa. There wasn't a fly shop, and if there was such a thing as a fly shop, I didn't even know about them until almost 20 years later. But anyway, that forgot what I was going to say, so I guess it don't make
No,
any
you're
difference.
how you finished your flies.
Oh, I finished my flies. I didn't have anywhere to learn, and I couldn't figure out how to do it in those stupid line drawings. So my dad showed me a half hitch on a post with a rope. I said, well, that would transfer over to the hook. So I put on a half hitch. And then my mom used to finish off all of her sewing with a loop through, and then she would do a triple wrap through the loop and pull it tight. I don't know, for lack of better words, I call it a triple half hitch. And anyway, and that's how I finished flies along with glue. It wasn't until I ran into, I'm pretty sure it was Jack Dennis late in the '70s, that I learned how to do the tool. Up after that, I eventually learned how to do it by hand, and I was doing hand whips. But then it's time for sharing on BTs. And tonight we're really hoping that our good friend Evelyn was able to. And Patty, here's your fly. Evelyn Adams.
Evelyn is
drew it
such a
for you.
wonderful artist.
That's just gorgeous, Evelyn. Thank you so much.
Back to that a little bit.
Oh, all right.
Kids were like,
Yeah, I got the directions too this time, Patty.
All right.
You know why this fly is tied? It's for Fred for sending me those feathers. It's going in the mail on Monday. And the name of the
Fred.
fly?
Alrighty. I often thought I'd like to try tying in hand without a vise. So I tackled it here about a week ago, and I started out with a woolly bugger first just to kind of get the feel of things. And I actually dubbed the body when I did it. Then I thought, well, let's up the game a bit and see what I can do. So I tied a royal wolf, and this is tied. Let's see, we get it to, there we go. In hand without a vise.
Wow, that is gorgeous.
Wow.
And then I did a second one. I changed the tailing material a bit, and I actually think this one looks a little better.
Oh man, that's great. You did moose for the tail on that one, right?
Wow.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Hey, we need to talk. Well, I would love to have you come on BT's Fly Tying Friday sometime and tie those in hand on camera.
That would be great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have a setup here other than just using the camera that's on my laptop.
Well, we can get together on the side, and I teach a class on how to use nothing but a laptop camera to do a full presentation. So if you're game, we'll start looking at that in about October.
Okay. Yeah, the big thing with this is to get all your materials laid out in the order that you're going to put them on before you start, because once you get going, you're holding your hook by the bend and the shank, and this is operating the bobbin. You're laying on material, so you have to have things laid out, ready to go, because you can't be messing around at that point looking for something. So you need to plan ahead and have everything ready to go. But I was surprised it can be done, but just it takes patience and just do it slowly so you make sure that you get all your materials placed where you want them, the way you want them to look.
Well, that one's beautiful right there, Dave. Thank you so much for that. There you go, Fred.
Just a thought. A lot of us here online have amassed large quantities of fly tying materials and hooks, etc., over the years. And to the extent we're almost hoarders. But anyway, why not have a part of your show, Al, where if people are having difficulty finding a certain type of material, to let the group know, and maybe one of the group can send that material to them.
Good idea.
Good suggestion. In other words, take the concept of sharing, and maybe we'll have a sharing to include materials, not
Correct.
just sharing a particular thing, but materials they have available.
Correct.
Okay, we'll think about that. Yes, because
Good idea.
we schedule our time, and we can just reschedule the time a little differently so that we have additional time for sharing of materials.
Yeah, this is Rick Russo. Along the same lines, if there are people online here and you go down to Mexico or any other place that doesn't have a lot of fly tying materials, I oftentimes take fly tying materials for the guides when I go down there, excess stuff that the club has or that I have, because I don't think they have ready accessibility to fly tying materials generally. So just think about it.
And it's
Good point.
way more expensive. When I used to lead trips down to Argentina, I always took stuff down for the guides. Beautiful.
What I wanted to show was, Patty, this is a insect mounting pin on the end of a dowel. And if you want to get into where you want to put your glue on those heads of that thing you had,
Yes.
you can make a real small dot and you get right in there without using the normal sized,
Yes.
here's a normal size bodkin.
That's it for tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. See you next time.